Hello, hello. What if the most powerful thing you can bring to the boardroom is the very resilience they told you to leave at the door? Today, we continue our June series, the execution series, Power, Pivot, and Purpose, by diving into the power of purpose. If you are ready to move from professional stagnation to strategic clarity, you are in the right place. Let's go. Hello, and welcome back to Women of Color Live, the live version of Women of Color, an intimate conversation, a top 20 women's empowerment podcast. We center and empower women of color. We also have a free newsletter built specifically for Black women 50 plus, the Dream Lifestyle Collective Weekly Rhythm. Go to DaninoGarrett.com to get started. And shout out to the production team at the Leon Thomas Group. Today's guest is Dr. Connie Bell, a Senior Vice President of Security Risks, a transformational executive leader, a doctoral mentor, founder of the Beyond the Bell Collective, and author of Shades of Strength. This month, we are in the execution series, Power, Pivot, and Purpose. Today, June 18th, we are centering our conversation on purpose. Dr. Bell, welcome to Women of Color.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here, and thank you for allowing me to talk to you and your guest.
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited to chat with you as well. We're going to get into the book, which I did finish. So I took it as homework and I made sure it was done. I dog-eared so many different pages. So I'm going to kind of let me just go pop here and ask a question from that. So
that's fine. That's wonderful.
That's how the conversation is going to go. So those who are watching, engage with us. Pop into the comments, leave WOC for Women of Color, leave Dreamer if you're part of the Dream Lifestyle Collective, and leave a heart if you're family or friend. We want to know you're out there. And if you have any questions or comments, drop those as well. So Dr. Connie and I, we go back. We were talking a little bit beforehand, and she gave me greetings for her son, which is I worked with him back in Las Vegas. So we both were in Vegas. I think Reno came in 2008. I came a little bit later in 2009. And then later, Dr. Connie and I were connected. We were going to kind of work together. She's running her centers. We were in a center in Vegas, and we were going to kind of partner, me as a manager. Shout out to Connie McGrew, who's going to connect all of that. So that was my first introduction to Dr. Connie. And I'm so excited of all the things that she's doing. Again, reading her book, learning more about her. And again, we'll get more into that. So Dr. Connie, who were you before the senior VP title and the doctoral credentials? And what was the specific decision that shifted how you saw yourself as a leader built for transformational purpose?
Well, let me say, long before anyone calls me a senior vice president or Dr. Bell, I was simply a young girl who believed education could change the trajectory of a family. So I'm the first in my family to graduate from college with a doctorate. And I learned very early that resilience wasn't optional. For me, it was about survival. And you probably read a lot of that in my book. Throughout my career, like most of us, I kept chasing the next title, the next promotion, the next achievement, because I believe that success was measured by what I accomplished. And let me say, I'm proud of those accomplishments, but purpose changed everything. When I had cancer, that changed everything. Becoming a survivor changed me. Most recently, losing my daughter, I can honestly say, has been or is still changing me. Those experiences forced me to ask different questions. So instead of asking, what else can I achieve? I started asking, who am I called to become? And who am I called to serve? Because I think leadership is a lot about servitude. So I would say the shift transformed my leadership. So today, whether I'm leading global incident response for thousands of employees or mentoring doctoral students, my focus isn't just on solving problems. It's helping people to discover, even in a crisis, there is a purpose. Leadership isn't about having the highest title in the room. It's about leaving people that are in the room or on your team stronger because you were in that room. So that's the leader I strive to be every day.
I love that. That's beautiful. Serving. Who am I called to be, and who am I called to serve? Those are beautiful things to live by. So I'm so glad that you are living by that. And I've seen it, right? As I mentioned, we've known each other for a while, and from a distance and whatnot. But I've seen that. I've seen that leadership from you. And so I appreciate everything that you're doing. And again, the book, learning so much about you, and absolutely resilience is woven throughout your book. And it's definitely a book for others to learn from, to glean from, to let them know that they're not alone, that they have some similarities, maybe experiencing those same things today, may have experienced them in the past. And then also to let them know that, you know what, regardless, they may come back. And this is how we get through it. This is how we navigate that.
Exactly.
So leading global strategies for incident response and fraud detection requires high-level execution. What did you have to unlearn about performing to fully step into the purpose-driven leadership you embody today?
Well, that's a big question, but I would say I had to unlearn the belief that my value came from always having the answers. So in corporate, especially for us women of color, you often are taught to outwork everyone. You're taught it's important that you prove yourself, not just one time, it's repeatedly, right? Mm-hmm. And make sure that no one ever questions your competence. And that mindset helped me to succeed, but it also can become exhausting, like because you're constantly, I call it performing or being on instead of simply leading. I recall a study showing or just kind of studying my performance results, like hours on end, right? Because I was afraid to be asked a question that I didn't have the answer for on the tip of my tongue. And when I tell you that was exhausting, that was truly exhausting. But I think the difference between that and purpose taught me something so much differently. People don't need to be perfect leaders. They need to be authentic leaders. So today I can stand here and say about security, about executive leadership. I can talk about cancer survivorship, grief, resilience in the same conversation because they're all part of my leadership story. And that's how I found my authentic self. I'm better personally, and I'm also better professionally when I show up with my authentic self.
And so, we talk a lot about authenticity, right? That's been something that has been talked about in the corporate world for the last probably 5 to 10 years. How are you defining authenticity?
So I think what my experience has taught me, again, as a woman of color, and that coming into some rooms, you have to shrink yourself, so who you really are, to become like the individuals in the room. And I think authenticity is where I come in the room and I'm just myself. I speak like myself, right? I think like myself. I'm not trying to be that picture perfect of all those individuals in the room. And I think there's strength in that because if everybody in the room is the same, right, then how are you getting something different in terms of solutions? And so I think there's strength. I think that we often come into a room and we think I have to either shrink myself or I have to prove myself. But in order to do that, I have to look, sound, and act like everyone else in the room. There's no diversity of thought in that. So I think that when I come in, I am who I am. I speak like I speak. I think like I think. I believe that there's value in that, and I'm adding to the room versus trying to be the same. And I think that's what authenticity is. It's just continuing to be yourself in whatever platform you're in at that particular time.
Yeah, and so in the book, you do talk a lot about how you showed up in rooms, right? And going back to, growing up, how, you know, I think you talk about shrinking a lot, even early on, and then even if you didn't use the word shrinking early on, being quiet and not being seen, right? And so that's kind of how you navigated your earlier years, not being seen, and you found comfort in that. Then you get into the workplace, and then at some point you realize that, okay, there is the comfort of me, not being seen, not being heard, right? I can move up under the radar, and then you're like, well, however, I want to move to the next level. So what would you say is probably the most pivotal thing that you learned out of the different experiences that you just shared with us, right?
Mhm.
The corporate, the grief, the cancer, losing your daughter. What would you say was probably the most pivotal thing that happened to you where you said, you know what, I need to be visible?
So I think that, first of all, I don't think you have one, you have several pivots throughout your career, right? And so I think the earliest one is that there was an opportunity for a role that was considered a promotion for me. And I was having, I think I talk about this in the book. I had a boss who talked about, you're smart, you're sharp, you have the numbers, but you're quiet.
Hmm.
And so I thought, I always thought if I have the results, right, I have the results, which tell you that I have the skills to do the role. And I was already doing particular aspects of my boss's role. Then, do I really have to speak? And I kept saying to myself, I don't like to talk. They're not going to make me talk. Nobody's going to make me talk. I'm just not going to speak. But what I realized is that prevented me from accelerating to the next role. So I think the first thing is that I do have something to say. I'll never forget it. I don't know if Deb is watching, but Deb people pulled me aside one day and she said, "You know the answers. Why don't you say anything?" But I was always worried
Yeah.
about someone looking at it and saying she doesn't talk right. She didn't enunciate that correctly. Look at her. And in the book I talk about, one of the reasons I talk in the book about, like, I didn't value the way that I looked or my color or my appearance. So I didn't want that attention. I didn't want people not just to talk to me because I didn't think I could articulate in my response, but also I didn't want them to notice me because I was used to, as you know, as a kid, just kind of quietly, if I can sink into the background, if I can sink into that background and no one sees me, that was perfectly fine. But what I found is that was going to impede my ability to ascend to different levels if I didn't talk about what I knew. So when I first started, that first pivot was, okay, speak up. But that first pivot, I was trying to speak in the way that everybody else was speaking.
Mm.
It made it very uncomfortable. So I had to study as hard. I had to study my results, like end on end. And I had to, like, practice being able to say it in a way that I thought it should be said. Right. Which oftentimes, if a follow-up question come, it caused me to have to, like, wow, it's like that brain freeze for a moment. Correct.
Right.
So that was that first, but that second one says, when I just get in the room and I just talk like Connie, I do so much better. I can
Mhm.
articulate my results. I can articulate what my team is doing. I can articulate what we're going to do in the future. I was able to not only perform, but tell people how I was able to accomplish those results, which I think also helped in that ascension to those results. The most recent pivot, I would say, is 6 years ago when I decided to retire from my previous company to come to this company that I'm here with today. And that was experiencing being in a workplace that doesn't value you,
Mhm.
makes you feel puts your well-being at risk, your mental stability as well as your physical stability at risk because of that lack of value and the way that they treat you. Because I always defined myself by my role.
Mhm.
And so what I had to do was start defining myself not by my internal role to the company that I was working for, but I was a mom. I was a person who volunteered, right? I sat on boards. So there was other things that made up me holistically rather than just that particular role. So I think once I started to value me outside of the role, right, then I think that I felt better physically, and emotionally. So I think that was the most recent pivot. When I think about today, my legacy won't be measured by the number of incidents my team resolved or the fraud we prevented. It will be measured by leaders I've helped develop, the
Yeah.
doctoral students who finished because I believed in them, the women who found their voice because I shared mine, and the people who realized that their hardest season didn't disqualify them, but it prepared them. So my hardest season didn't disqualify me. It prepared me for the role that I'm in, or the roles that I'm in today. Corporate strategies have an expiration date. Purpose doesn't.
I love that. Corporate strategy has an expiration, purpose doesn't. And you're so right about that, right? And what you just said, as far as, what you're doing, it gives others permission to do the same. And so when we do, shrink, when we do stay quiet, when we have something to say, we're telling everybody else to do the same. So when we flip that and we go ahead and speak out, and we're visible, we're having that exposure, we're letting other people know that, yes, it's fine for you to do the same, and yes, you deserve to be out front, yes, you deserve the visibility, the exposure, and all the things. And so to those who are watching, those who are listening, know that, like, oftentimes when you hold back what's in you, your gifts, it's a disservice to yourself first, and then it's definitely a disservice to other people.
Yeah, when you talk about disservice to other people, and I talk about this in the book, is that there was an incident that happened when I was young in my career, young as a manager, and we had a team dinner, team event, or what have you, and I had one of the executives come and actually shared. He didn't sit not by me. I won't say didn't sit by me. He sat in my chair, and he actually started rubbing my leg. And being young in my career, I didn't know what to do, right? And I had someone next to me, and I kind of nudged her because we're like staring at each other, like, I don't know what to do. And I didn't report it. I'd rather not talk about it ever again. And the book forced me to face that again. But it's like, what haunts me every day is the fact that I wonder how many young ladies came behind me that had that same experience with him because I didn't speak up.
Yeah.
And that's going to forever haunt. It's never going to go away. What it has taught me, I don't have a problem now speaking up. That's for sure.
Right.
But I probably did a disservice to young women who were forced to work for that leader and may have that same experience that I did.
Yes. And you know what? And so this is common, though, which is sad, right? Because I don't know what I was listening to, watching, where something similar came up and a person, said the same type of thing, like, dang, had I said something, like how many women, had to go through the same thing because I didn't. True. And you did what you could. Right. In here, we said survival. You were surviving. You were living. Yeah. You had people who depended on you, your kids, your family, other family members. So you did what you knew to do. And that's fine. And we, give ourselves grace regarding that. And yes, you're right. There are others who came behind, possibly because you didn't speak up. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
And it's haunting. It's haunting because it's like, maybe that leader didn't. I mean, just think about it. It wasn't. It's about the people who came behind. It's about that leader because maybe he didn't realize like the impact that he was having on me as an individual, right, and as a female, right. Because of that experience, it didn't. Because at that time, a lot of the leaders we had were males, right, and so it did make me very cautious. Not even. Just even having a conversation with them, definitely wasn't going to sit next to them. Right. So it's like that's never going to happen again. But it's like, he probably could have used that feedback to say, okay, you know what, let me course correct as well. And when somebody doesn't say anything to change the behavior, right, the behavior can continue to happen over and over again. So he may have gone and did that. Over and over again, where my speaking up may have changed not only my life, others' life, but his life, as well.
Yeah. But again, you learn, today you're different. Today, speaking up, again, you knew how to move around the situation. So you did, right? You still did help people, or at some point you did. And so again, we need to give ourselves grace when we didn't act the way that we think, it could have it could have made a difference for people who came behind us. That's fine. For your reasons, you didn't, but you're doing it now.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Dr. Connie, you lead global security risks, and you're also a breast cancer survivor and author of Shades of Strength. Most leaders separate their survival from their strategy. You haven't. What does anchoring your strategy and your personal purpose make possible that a corporate plan alone never could? And hold that thought. We'll be back after this break. I've been doing this work for a while, building, credentialing, showing up week after week for women of color, and more recently for Black women 50 plus who deserve a seat at every table in every room. And I want you to know the rooms are getting bigger. This year, I walked into the Black Enterprise Women of Power Summit as credentialed press. I was accepted as press in the room at the Millikan Institute Global Conference, one of the most prestigious gatherings of global leaders on the planet. I was also honored as a Leadership in Action honoree at Career Master. And I finished in the top 5 in my category in the National Entrepreneur of Impact competition. And I'm not waiting for permission to be in the room. I'm building my way into every one of them. And the next phase, already in motion. DreamCon is confirmed. And I'm going with the intention of interviewing my dream podcast guest. Who do you think it is? Drop it in the comments. And we're still waiting on Roots Picnic, BET Cultural's Biggest Week, and Essence Festival. Credential press at the marquee cultural events of 2026, bringing those conversations directly back to you across my social channels. And if you're a Black woman over 50 who is done settling for the life you thought you were supposed to have, who is ready to dream boldly, decide intentionally, and drive your vision, there's a community built specifically for you. The Dream Lifestyle Collective, where we don't just talk about the dream, we live it. All right, so here's how you can be part of what's building. Watch and subscribe on YouTube, where we have new conversations every Thursday. Listen and subscribe to the top 20 women's empowerment podcasts, Women of Color in Intimate Conversation. And if you're ready to join our community, come inside the Dream Lifestyle Collective. And if you're a brand and you're ready to be in a room where women of color conversations happen, and more specifically where Black women 50 plus gather, become a sponsor. The vision is already moving. Catch up to it. All right, welcome back to Women of Color Live. Today we're talking about the execution of purpose with Dr. Connie Bell. Before the break, I asked, what does anchoring your strategy and personal purpose make possible that a corporate plan alone never could?
So I think that, thank you for that. And I think that your personal strategy, I actually don't think that they're separate. Let me say that. I actually think there's some alignment there. There is some alignment between the two strategies. But I think when you anchor yourself in your personal strategy, it's almost like your personal brand. So whatever my personal strategy is, I want that to overflow into my corporate strategy. So let me give you an example. So as an individual, right, I want to be branded as somebody who has the highest integrity. And this is individual. I work hard at whether that's family initiatives or corporate initiatives. When I worked in corporate, I had one role where they called us, I don't know if Alicia's on, but they called us the Merry Maids. So, because they said if we were coming to your call center, we were coming to clean it up. And, so we had this reputation, if you will, of coming to clean things up in a way that says to help you do better. And so my personal brand and my personal strategy is about helping myself and others to become better. But that also that story, right, aligns and tells you that also aligns with my corporate strategy, which is that when I show up in whatever role, my strategy is how do I help these individuals in these roles that either are peers, subordinates, higher ups, whatever you say, be better at what they do. And so I don't think that there's a true difference in that. So I don't know. Yeah, that's how I would answer that.
Okay. And so before we talk more about Beyond the Bell Collective, like I said, I'm going to open up the book and choose one of these that I folded back, and let's see. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. The allegation was that I was a Black Christian woman who only hired Black Christian women as my direct reports.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
and let me just say that's the one I talked about, but that did not happen just one time in my career. So just to say that.
And I want to talk about that. And here's why I want to talk about that is because when we do it, oh, it's a big deal. But don't they do it all the time?
Yeah, it happens. It's perspective is everything. And so, and in that instance, I won't say I was early in my career, but I was early in my career, I think, as a director, and an individual made a complaint that everybody on my team was a Black Christian woman. And so when my boss called me to talk to me, she had a different tone than she normally, because normally we talk about the kids, we do all of that, right? And so she kind of went straight to it, and I was like, okay, this is a different conversation. I wanted to respect that, so I allowed her to run the meeting how she would normally, and I did not get off track for that because I figured she had to take notes and what have you. But what's interesting is that perspective that everyone on my team was a Black woman, and that a Black Christian woman is what it basically said. And so at the end, she asked me, what do you get out of this complaint or what have you? So one is perspective. That was far from true, because we had a very, we did have I would say a high minority count on the team, but where the offices that I ran, it was a high minority, location. So usually your leadership team looks like the people who work for you, right? So that wasn't. But I also had 2 men on the team, and so it was very interesting that they said that. But when she asked me, what do you get out of all of this? And I think the first thing I tuned into was they said Christian, and what that helped me see and validate was that when I'm in the workplace, I still walk and talk like God demands that I do, right? Which for me was not a bad thing. I didn't feel like that was a bad thing, because why should I have to separate my faith when I walk into the workplace? I pray all the time. I don't know if you can see my stickers, but I have my little stickers here to remind me of prayers to pray for the leaders of our country, the leaders of my company, my team, their families. And so to me, that said, you know what, you didn't separate yourself. You didn't separate what you truly believe in with the way that you lead. And so while it was meant to be a negative connotation, I actually felt pretty good about it. I didn't like, that I had a complaint, but, they come in these roles, they come. It's for sure what they say. It is lonely at the top sometimes. So it was like, but at the same token, it was like, I was proud. I was proud that I exude what I'm trying to be, is a Christian woman. I am Black, so can't take that away. But that I'm a Christian woman, and I act that way in the workplace. And that doesn't mean, I'm running around, pray for people and,
right.
hands or anything like that. But what it does mean is that what they see from me, what comes out of everything that I do, that they can see that I'm a Christian woman. So.
And that's part of that authenticity that you were talking about, right? And like you said, what they meant for evil really wasn't, because it just highlighted like, yes, okay, you see me as a Christian. I'm glad you do, because I am. And
That's
this is how I live life. So yay, you recognizing, right?
Yeah.
All the other stuff you're talking about, let's deal with facts and data. Like, this really is the team makeup, but you only paying attention to the 2 or 3 because of something in you, right? Not me, it's you. Yeah.
When you're in that group, or you define yourself as such way, of course, we live in cities and we go to conferences, and they might be a Christian conference or a business conference or whatever. You will run into people that work with you or for you. Right. And so it does not mean that, okay, Deneen, we're going to go together. It could mean that, but it doesn't always mean that. Right. So you may hear us both talking about the same event that we're going to. And so it doesn't mean that, we're doing it together. So what that person, like I said, perspective, their perspective was, we're doing all these things together. And that's why. And it was really amazing that, how can you overlook the staff that I had that were men, on the team. And the staff person, so we had like what I call field people who worked in the centers, and then had staff people who worked with me. And two of those guys actually, it's on the floor. It was me and my assistant, and then two of those guys. So it's like when you talk about me and my really direct team that's with me all the time, it was 2 men and 2 women.
Well, that didn't fit the narrative. That part is not the narrative. So that's why. Like, no, but you didn't say anything about his team over there when they all look just like him. You don't have an issue with that.
Absolutely. It had that happen as well, right? Is where somebody came and said, your team is starting to look like, they told me was somebody said that you're hiring a lot of Black people on your team. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really interesting because I have two, this, and I was like, but it's about perspective. So when to me, I believe in diversity, not just diversity of people, but diversity of thought. Mm-hmm. Right. And so sometimes, it is what it is. But when those numbers start to look like you have more people of color, right, then it sometimes is that perspective is that you're hiring too many of them. Yeah. Right. And it just may be what it is. I don't hire people by their color. I hire people, by their skill. I had a student who sent me a message one day, which is really weird. And he said that I'm not sure that you should be my chair because you're treating me like one of them. And I was like one of them, like what are you talking about? And he meant like one of Black people. And I was like, well, so I don't pick my students. I don't know how random they do it or availability or however. It's not done by me. And I had to agree with him, or you're absolutely right. Because if that's your perspective, right? Because I don't choose my students, they're given to me. so it's like, if they happen to be minorities, then that's great. If they happen not to be, that's great and wonderful. At the end of the day, I'm going to meet each student where they are and coach and develop them to get their dissertation at the end of the day. That's what it's about. But I had to agree with him on, it's probably not a good relationship, especially if you're feeling that way. But at the same token, and I had to call my boss and say, am I allowed to fire a student? So because, that was, his perspective, because I would have student calls, and it was totally volunteer, where I would just jump on a line once a week, and they can jump on and get their questions asked. Mm-hmm. And so I guess his perception was, because a lot of them were jumping on were minorities, that, I'm leaning that way. I don't have any idea who's going to jump on. It's like I put the invite out there, you decide to jump on. So perspective of others is something we do have to manage it, right? But it's not what, at the end of the day, I want to live by.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's another one, because this is definitely appropriate and befitting for today. So pushing through was no longer a badge of honor. That season taught me something important. Strength is not always visible. So sometimes it looks like rest. Sometimes it looks like asking for help. And sometimes it looks like continuing forward quietly, even when your body feels like it's betraying you.
Yep. So I do a series on called the well-being is a leadership imperative. And this kind of goes along that line, because oftentimes, particularly for women, and doesn't just women, right? We believe that we have to push harder, have to do more. But sometimes when you're doing that, you're depleting your body physically. So are you really doing more? I tell my team sometimes an in-basket or inbox. An inbox is an inbox where there should be something in it. So if you're always working to clean it out, there's probably something wrong. You're off balance. And so it is imperative, right? Not just how I lead as a leader, but how my team sees me. Because if I'm not taking care of myself, and I just keep pushing through, how many, nobody tells you you're working too hard. If you're pushing through and you're like showing up to everything and you're working 16-hour days, nobody is going to tell you you're working too hard. They're going to allow you to do it, but you're depleting your body until that point. And so when I talk about my experience with breast cancer, I was just pushing and pushing. I was like totally ignoring all the signs that were happening, because in my mind, like I had to do better because I'm a Black female. I had to do better than everybody else. So it wasn't an option for me to stop. At that time, I felt like it wasn't an option for me to stop and take care of myself. I just had to keep pushing. So then when I was forced to do that, right, even in that, when I look back on those moments, I kept going and going and going until I heard the word. I'm 99% sure this is breast cancer. And that's when my world tumbled. And I won't say that I'm good at this today. I'm not gonna lie.
Right.
It's constant, it's a constant work. But I'll tell you when it hit me most recently is that because yesterday, 2 days ago, I celebrated 18 years cancer free. So, but it hit me most recently when my daughter went through her journey. And when I kept telling her, you got to go to the doctor, because she said, Mama, I found a lump. And I was like, you got to go to the doctor. And I'm like calling her and following up, like, you got to go to the doctor. You can't wait. You have the gene, and I'm doing all of this. And she kept saying, she was teaching at the time. I got to make sure, everything is together for my students. I got to make sure. And she was doing the exact same thing that I was. Yeah. And so what that tells you is that people who are watching you, you can talk all you want, but if your story doesn't tell what you're saying, people are not going to listen to you.
Yeah, that's the behavior you modeled for her. So that's how she needed to be. And going back to what we said earlier, like when we're not showing up in our excellence and our gifts, like we're not giving people permission to do the same, right? Or if we're showing that we're constantly overworking, we're answering emails at 1 a.m. on Saturday, you're telling your employees, like, dang, I need to do the same thing. No, we got to check that. Here's the deal. We do have to work harder. We do. Yeah. It's facts. We do, right? But what we have to do individually is to recognize, what do we want out of life? What are we called to do? Like you said, who are we called to serve? And once we align with that, then we can look back to say, you know what? I'm not going to check emails on a weekend. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start saying no more, because it's not in alignment with who I'm called to be and who I'm called to serve. But we have to take that time. We have to rest. We have to pull back. We have to pause to say, okay, who am I to be? Who am I supposed to be? And then back into that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I do want to go ahead and shift into the Beyond the Bell Collective. So tell us a little bit about what is Beyond the Bell Collective.
So Beyond the Bell Collective is a collection of services, if you will, that help support students in their doctoral journey and executive leadership coaching and mentoring. It also has an advocacy pillar, which focuses on advocacy for those individuals who are going through serious illnesses. And then it's about voices, because we all have a voice, and it's about using your voice to stimulate leadership competencies, or, like you said, just have a conversation like we have now, and cause thoughts for people, for leadership thinking and thoughts.
Okay, I love that. I love that, especially the voice part. And that's how this podcast came to be. It actually was a panel. I had created a panel for LGBTQ plus women of color and allies to have a platform to use their voices at a corporate event. And then it grew into the podcast. And again, to give us a voice, because we don't always have spaces where we're able to use our voices. And so I'm glad it's one of your 3 pillars.
Well, so I'm glad that you're having this, because for so many years, I believed that professionalism meant leaving my personal story at the door.
Yeah.
And then I thought that if I worked hard enough and I earned enough credentials and delivered enough results, that would be enough. And I think that sharing these stories is what really matters, because it's not just helping yourself. Kind of like reflection is a help for you, right? And so sharing the story not only brings reflection, but also it brings permission to people coming behind you.
Yeah. And you know what? And there was a time when we could just put our head down and the work would speak for ourselves. I'm not sure how long ago that stopped, that shifted, but there was a time people would just come and tap you, you know what I'm saying? And it kind of still happens in a way, but for the most part, if you're not visible, if you're not getting an exposure, then it doesn't necessarily happen for you. So yeah, we do have to be visible.
Yeah, right? And that's why I created, Beyond the Bell Collective, because I think the sole reason it exists is because what it feels, I know what it feels like to question whether you belong.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know what it's like to navigate the doctoral journey while balancing a demanding career, family, grief, and responsibilities. I also know what it's like to sit in executive boardrooms where you may be the only woman or the only Black woman or the only woman of a certain age. It's right. So the only person that looks like you, right? But one of the greatest lessons that in leadership came outside the boardroom, and like I said, that was when my daughter was um, diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and I became more than just her mother. I became her advocate. So I had to learn like how to ask those hard questions, how to challenge assumptions, how to seek second opinions, how to ensure that her voice was heard when she didn't always have the strength to advocate for herself, and that wasn't really an option for her. So my advocacy it came out of an act of love. I would
Yeah.
say that experience changed me forever. I didn't really understand the how to define advocacy until I had to become an advocate um, for her.
Yeah.
Um, and when I say advocate for her, I'm tell you where this challenged me the most was when I advocated for her. The me wanted to run things.
Mm-hmm.
And so the challenge was when you advocate for someone else, you have to lose your voice and advocate in their voice.
Mm.
And so that was the real challenge. And so part of the advocacy pillar for beyond, I think that's important for people that I think they need to understand that. I think they need to know how to do that. I think they need to know the resources that are available to help them do that. Because when you advocate, it takes the you out of advocacy. It is really about the individual. So these entire getting a doctoral and advocating for my daughter, it all reminded me that from a leadership perspective, that leadership isn't just about influencing outcome in businesses. It's about using your voice when it matters most.
Mm-hmm.
It's about standing in the gap. You know, we talk about standing in the gap for
Yeah.
someone else, and it's refusing to accept good enough. Right? It's just it's okay. That's good enough. No, it's refusing to accept good enough when someone's life, their dignity, and their future is at stake.
Yeah. And I love that you bring that up, and I love that that's part of your pillars as well, because I'm just thinking about, so my cousin, I recently lost my cousin to cancer, and when she went into the hospital, um they had her on radiation, and they had a conversation on whether or not to continue the radiation. And so really the radiation was just extending her life, but it was not adding to her life, right? It was
Right.
doing nothing. It was actually more harm than otherwise. And so my cousin, her son, had to make the decision whether or not to keep her on radiation. The doctor told him, like, if it were me, I would not, right? I would make my mom comfortable. And so he just still, went ahead with, oh no, we'll keep her on or whatever. And then my mom asked her, like, do you want to stay on radiation? And she was like, no, radiation is bad. And so they told the doctor. And so because she spoke up for herself and she was, in her right mind to be able to decide that, they did stop the radiation. And I bring that up because she was like in and out when she was in the hospital. She was lucid enough to say no to that, because she knew it wasn't doing anything for her. She was getting weaker. She was getting smaller. She was, more deteriorating even more because of that, as
Right.
opposed to it wasn't going to do anything. That's all
Yeah.
it was doing, was giving her days to be like that. And so at that moment, she was able to advocate for herself. And at the same time, my cousin, he had to come and advocate as well, because there were decisions he needed to make. He needed to understand the full picture of what was going on. And we do have to speak up, because not everybody has our best interests. Doctors have multiple patients, so they're not necessarily thinking about you all day long, right? And that also goes into corporate world. Like, you have to speak up for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself, because your boss didn't go to sleep thinking about you and didn't wake up thinking about you, right? You have to do that for yourself. So again, I'm glad that the advocacy piece is part of your pillar, because it is something that a lot of us don't know to do, don't know how to do, and may even be afraid to.
Yeah. So I look at it like this. My credentials tell you I have expertise. My story tells you I have empathy, and my advocacy tells you I have courage.
Yeah.
When those three come together, that's where true authority over my life lives.
And I want to ask you this. So this is because we're talking about cancer and because you did survive it and then you went through it with your daughter. And I think about this as well too. So what feelings came up as far as you having survived it and your daughter didn't?
So when you think about advocacy, again, I advocated the way that she wanted me to advocate. I did what she wanted in terms of her treatment plan. So what still comes up for me today is what she wanted and what I wanted was totally different. So I'm like your cousin. I was totally on the side. And so one is if I had moved things in a direction that I wanted to go in, which would have mirrored more of the plan that I had, my wealth plan, that I had to recover from cancer, to her and force her to go that way, would she still be here? But you talked about dignity. And so I wanted to, and I told her, because we had many conversations, and I really think she thought I was gonna do what I was gonna do, which was really hard. I'm telling you how hard it was as a mom, and then as my personality, I wanted to run things the way I felt that they should go. But like I said, there's no you in advocacy. When you're advocating for someone else, you advocate on their behalf, and that is what they want. Even if it doesn't align with what you want. And so what the thing that comes up today, and I spend many hours awake in the evenings, still that's in my head. Had I forced or advocated for what I wanted for her, would she still be here?
Yeah.
And I think that comes up, and it literally every day. It's like I have that thought, like what the what ifs, right? What if I had done that? Because our wellness plan looks so different from each other, but she was someone who was focused on natural treatments.
Okay.
And so that's the way that she wanted to go. And I'm old school, so I'm more the medical type of treatments. And so I tried to meet her halfway and say, let's blend the two. But when you meet your mini me, when no, this is what I will tell you. In some of her last days, her oncologist came to see me, and he said, he came to see her, and I was outside in the waiting room, and he came and he said, I meet many patients. I said, this is the way I want it. He says, at some point as it progressed, they bail and they go, now I want to do this. I want to try this. I want to try this. And he said she was very well aware, and she stayed her course. He said, I admire her for that because she chose her course. She knew her outcomes, and she stayed that course. As a mom, I don't know if I'll ever feel good about that, but I think that's what saddens me most is that I couldn't convince her to go in a direction that I thought would give her more time. Would it have saved her? I don't know. But I felt like it would have given me more time with her. Yeah.
And I know I've seen pictures of Jillian, and I'm like, oh my God, that's her twin. I was like, good Lord, they look just alike.
A lot of people don't know, and this is like, the whole thing about the book is talks about color, right? So in the Black community, as you know, especially in my age group, color was a big thing. It could be a separator of what people thought you could aspire to be or you could be, right? Because of your color. And so people naturally, her color was more closer to her dad's. And so people said she looks like her dad. And so there's one of the pictures that I posted that she and I actually look just alike, right? Only difference is we're different colors. So,
no, you absolutely do. And then as far as, you mentioning that, you do talk. So for those who haven't read the book yet, who haven't gotten the book, Dr. Connie does talk about colorism, right? Her experiences with that. I mean, this book talks about so many experiences that numerous people have had, numerous people probably are having now and will have. And so I want to make sure you all, check it out, get the book. read it. There's so much, and I mean, and you could even so many different sections to whereas you can even write a book on that. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna go deeper on that part and this part and so on and so forth. So I really enjoy reading. Like I said, I have so many earmarks, but I'm not going to go into any more.
Leave that number 2. We'll do number 2.
Right. Okay, so through your work with the Beyond the Bell Collective, what do you want the woman watching to walk away and build or stop waiting to start regarding her own scholarship and storytelling?
I'm going to say stop asking for permission.
Lisa, look, that's the next question. So we don't need. No, I'm just saying you've already answered it. It's like we don't need permission. That's it, and that's
like cross that way out. But I think that I would tell you to stop asking for permission. We wait on people to give us permission to do all kinds of things in our lives. I think far too long, many women of color have been conditioned to wait for someone else to validate their ideas, recognize their value, invite us into the room, or tell us when we're ready for the room, right? So we've been taught to collect one more credential, or work twice as hard, or stay humble, or be grateful just to have a seat at the table. And so it's like when we come up with an idea, and so it's like, how many people do you call to go, girl? What I'm thinking. And if you can ask 5 people, 4 of them say yes, go. If one of them says, girl, I wouldn't do that,
then you're not gonna do it.
You're not gonna do
it. Well, yeah, I knew. See, yeah, no.
No, stop asking for permission. It's like, because there comes a moment when you realize the table you're keeping or you're trying to earn a seat at was never designed with you in mind. So, we say it all the time, I'm creating my own table, or, it's like people say, I'm gonna create my own seat. If there's not a seat for your table, I'm gonna create my own seat. Just create your own table.
Yes.
Right. So that's when everything changes. So you don't need permission to dream bigger. You don't need permission to pivot. You definitely don't need permission to redefine success. My success is based on how I define it, not how you define it.
Yeah.
You don't need permission to heal. And we just talked about this. You don't need permission to rest. We feel like if I rest, if I take time off, oh my God, they're going to think I'm flaking. They're going to think I'm not. You don't need permission to rest. Build something that has never existed before. So I built Beyond the Bell because I think that while there are doctoral coaching things, I have 3 pillars. So, and I love the word collective. You use that too, right? It's a collection of things, right? So they may not connect for everybody else, but they connect for me. I don't need permission to do that.
No, and that's the mantra of this whole, thing. You don't wait for permission, you become it. And when you become it, everything rises to meet you. And that's the dream lifestyle standard. And I want to kind of go back to what you just said, the whole thing about the tables and in the rooms and all those things. Like, we've been chasing to be at that table, to be in those rooms. Nope, they were never designed for us in mind. Some of us get seats, some of us are allowed in. That's great, that's fine. And when that happens, bring others along, right?
Right.
What I want to bring up is when I was reading, and you mentioned it towards your end at the company that we both retired from, how you have been there over 20-something years performing, doing the thing, and then you get in this one particular role, and now they flip the script on you, and I'm like, oh no, you're not performing. And so, you made a decision, okay, I'm about to make moves. Same situation with me. It's like, you're doing a thing, you're excelling, all the things, and wanting to be in a certain room on a certain table, and it doesn't happen. And I started thinking, wait a minute, hold up. Okay, y'all don't define my worth. You don't. I'm doing a thing. I'm recorded data, all the things, but you're not letting me in that particular room. So when I got the call that I'm going to lead the room that I was trying to get into, I made a decision then it's time to go. And so, and I didn't leave just yet. I had 18 months. So I was playing chess and not checkers, counting down for those 18 months, still excelling and doing what I was doing, but didn't let anybody know. Like, there was one person that I worked with that knew that I was leaving in 18 months, but nobody else did. And I was doing my thing. But the point is, it became a time when it was like, you know what? No, there's so much more for me to do. Or what I'm doing, I can do for myself. I can do differently. I can do somewhere else. I can do whereas I don't need to ask anybody to allow me in the room. I don't need to ask anybody to allow me at the table, which is what you're doing with Beyond the Bell.
Yeah. So I think what you're saying, like I realized that working for that company and having a job at that company and extending at that company became who I was, is how I defined it. Success is how I defined myself. Once I realized that was not true, and I gave myself the freedom and the permission to say, okay, this is no longer for me.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like me. I didn't say anything either. I made the decision long before I actually exited. So, right. But it's important that we as women stop defining our jobs, our careers as who we are. That's what you do. That's not who you are. And I think once you define that, who I am, not what I do. Once you define who you really are, then you will give yourself permission to step into whatever your true purpose is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say though, I was in my dream job. I was doing what I had spent 5 to 6 years to be able to do. So, I had that. I was loving it. Then again, it was a thing to where I realized that, you know what, I'm not valued.
Yeah.
I'm not valued. My output does not, equate how I'm being valued. And so that was the decision that I made. And then really, honestly, towards the end, they had got rid of all of that anyway.
Right.
It would have been God.
Yeah. Say God's design.
Okay, exactly.
Because what people have to remember, titles may introduce you, but your purpose is what people remember.
Yes.
Much of my career, I believe that success was about reaching the next milestone, getting the next promotion, getting the next credential, the next opportunity. And I'm grateful for every one of those experiences. And they help me take care of my family. But life has a way of redefining you. Surviving cancer taught me that tomorrow's never guaranteed. Walking alongside my daughter through breast cancer taught me that love is expressed through presence and advocacy and courage. And leading teams through crisis taught me that people don't remember every decision you make. They remember how you made them feel during the hardest moments.
Yes. And I have no regrets, right? Like I have absolutely no regrets. Like you said, took care of family, grew, learned my purpose. I learned my purpose when I was in Vegas, right? And my purpose happened to take me to D&I. And again, this podcast comes out of that because it was something that I was doing in D&I where I created the panel, which is now a podcast and now production. Right. And I'm in the works on something else, taking it to the next level, right? So it all came from that place. So no regrets, right? So those that are watching or listening, no regrets. It's just to know what it is that you want out of life. Again, as Dr. Connie said, who are you to be? Who are you to serve? How do you want your life to be, your legacy, all those things, figuring that out. And then what gets you there is what you want to lean into. So Dr. Connie, before we wrap, what would you like to leave those watching or listening with regarding their own purpose?
So I would say, today, I don't measure my life by titles that I've held, the boardrooms I've entered, or the awards I received. I measure it by lives I've impacted. And I ask myself questions like, did I make someone feel seen? Did I help someone discover their voice? Did I create opportunities for others who might never have been invited into the room? Did I leave every person, every team, every community stronger than I found it? That's the legacy I'm trying to build today. Success may open many doors. Influence may earn me many platforms, but significant changes lives. At this stage in my life, I'm not chasing another title. I'm building leaders. I'm building advocates, and I'm building spaces where people understand that their story isn't something to hide. It's often the very thing that equips them to lead with compassion, courage, and conviction.
Love. Dr. Connie Bell, thank you for bringing your story, your purpose, your resilience, and every shade of your strength to Women of Color Live today. And a big thank you to the Leon Thomas Group for holding it down every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And so, those that are watching or listening, share this with a woman who needs to be reminded that legacy is what you're building right now. And we'll be back next Thursday, June 25th, again at 1 p.m. Eastern, with author, spiritual life coach, and certified clinical hypnotist, Ebony Goodrich, as we close out the execution series, Power, Pivot, and Purpose. See you next time.